And I'm just going to be working through some of the reasons that I think mobile is probably the first technology that we've had in teaching, which stands a good chance of sticking around for quite some time. So I'm going to look at various reasons for that. The first reason, and you'll notice that my little slides have graphics coming down from the top left. The first one is a pound sign. You can exchange it for your own sign if you like, a dollar or whatever. The first thing I think is that mobile and handheld learning is cheap or potentially cheap. Now, if you look back at the history of technologies in language teaching, I've been in language teaching for 27 years now, a long, long time. See that over that period, we've had a collection of technologies that have come and mostly or largely gone. So we've had things like multimedia computer labs full of computers. We've had what else? We had smart boards, interactive whiteboards. Those are two kind of key examples that some of you may be very, very familiar with. And looking at both of those, we can say one thing, I think, predominantly, or in my experience, we can say, that is that they're quite expensive, both of those solutions. Building a room and equipping it with computers is quite expensive. Buying interactive whiteboards is also the payload of those technologies. If you look at how they're used, is perhaps not reason a developed country thing. And you'll find that one of the first things that people spend their money on when they have a little bit of income is a mobile device. So for the first time in history, at least on the economic plane, we have devices in the hands of pretty much everyone. And those devices do come with them. Pass is a separate issue, which we can come to perhaps in the questions. But bare minimum, this is the first time in technology's history where students have largely paid for the technology. Okay, that's a real economic bonus. Are we having trouble with the order? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hello, hello, hello. Okay. Okay, fine. I'm going to carry on then. Everyone else thinks it's largely fine, so I will carry on. Okay. So the first reason I think is a purely economic one. There's a lot of technology out there that schools and education systems now do not have to pay for to bring into education. Okay, so that's one reason. Let's move on to the second reason. I think the second reason is that it's a particularly easy process to integrate. Now, I don't mean easy pedagogically. I mean easy in terms of infrastructure and in terms of support. Because, again, for the first time in technology history, we have people coming to class with a technology that they understand, a technology that they use, that they know how to use, a technology that doesn't confuse them or present them with any challenges. Now, you can't say that particularly necessarily about desktop computers or laptop computers or an interactive whiteboard. This is one of the first technologies that requires very little support, very little technical support, and that's a very, very good thing. It's primarily a good thing because it frees teachers up to do what they're best at, which is the teaching bit, and they won't have to worry so much, I think, about the technical side. So that's a second big reason. Okay, the third reason, mobile phones are one of the least disruptive technologies we have for teaching. Now, I noticed in the chat box that people have already mentioned this issue of distraction. Now, distraction is a very interesting question, I think, because, well, contrary, I think, to what a lot of people think, distraction is not a technology issue, particularly in the classroom, I think. Distraction is a class management issue. It's also a task design issue. But it's not really a technology issue, because if you take the technology away from people, then they will simply revert to being distracted by other things. They'll start tapping each other on the shoulder, or passing notes under the table, or sketching on notepads, or staring out of the window. So distraction is not a technology thing. Of course, technology can distract people, but so can many other things. One of our jobs, I think, as a teacher, is to make sure that we're not so easily, that we don't let people get distracted so easily. So that's why I say I think it's a classroom management and a task design issue, more than a technology issue. But on top of that, looking at mobile phones, one of the great things about mobile phones is that if you take a mobile phone like the one I have here, and you ask students to turn it upside down and put it on the desk, that mobile phone becomes, to all intents and purposes, that mobile phone becomes invisible. It's not a distraction anymore. If the notifications are turned off, and if file is upside down on a table, it clearly can't be a distraction anymore. Now, you can't say the same thing about laptops and computers, because it's very hard to make a big computer invisible. Oh, something's had my slide. Okay, my slides are coming back. So it's hard to make a computer disappear or a laptop disappear, but it's actually very, very easy in a class to make a mobile phone disappear. So that's another good reason, I think. Okay, I'm going to move on to the fourth reason. The fourth, technology itself, mobile phones themselves are motivating. People like using their mobile phones. You can tell that by going outside and having a look around. If you go out into the street, or if you go and sit in a cafe or a bar, or if you go to a restaurant, or all sorts of places, you'll see people enjoying their mobile phones all the time, perhaps a little bit too much. But the fact is, people do like using them. Now, people like them because they are new or entertainment devices, people chatting with friends, all those help students understand how those entertainment devices, the devices that they find so motivating and entertaining and compelling, how they can use those in the service of their learning. And that's actually, I think, a much more interesting role for a teacher than the role of technical support that I mentioned earlier. If we don't have technical support and so much training for teachers to use these devices, then we can spend time on the most important part, which for me is the pedagogical, the kind of principled pedagogical application of that tool in the classroom. So that's a fourth reason. A fifth reason. I think the fifth reason is that they are normalized. Some of you may have heard of a man called Stephen Banks, who wrote a seminal article about computer-assisted language learning quite a few years ago now. And he said that one of the big problems with technology was that we made it too special. You know, we insisted on making it special and separate from everything we do. We would march people off to computer rooms, or we would make a big thing about using a computer or a laptop. And he said that really technology in education would only really become effective when it became as normal, or normalized as he called it, as normal as some of the other things we use, things like pens and notebooks and dictionaries, that really technology comes into its own and fulfills its potential when it is a normal part of, in all sorts of contexts, often largely outside the classroom. But if we could capitalize on that kind of normalization within our classroom, we would have a very powerful tool, a tool that wasn't special, that wasn't out of the norm, that wasn't exciting, overstimulating or motivating, but something that was firmly embedded in what we do. And actually, mobile phones are the first phones that have the opportunity, mobiles are the first devices, if you like, that have the opportunity to become a normalized device. So that's a fifth reason. It's actually, I think, an incredibly important one for me. The next reason is a kind of linking reason. It's that mobile phones are a kind of, they're a bridge or a link often between what happens inside a classroom and what happens outside a classroom. So if you're using mobile devices regularly in and outside the classroom, students can begin to bring things from outside into the classroom, to bring parts of their lives into the classroom and integrate those things into their learning, but also take things that they do in class back out into the real world with them. And it's that kind of relationship, I think, between what happens in class and well. And it's one of the most exciting things about mobile, really, is that they allow people to see, if they're used well, they allow people to see a connection between what happens in the rarefied atmosphere of a classroom and normal life or life outside that classroom. So that's my sixth reason. And I'm going to move on to the last few reasons just to think really about the devices themselves, because the great thing about mobile phones, and they don't have to be smartphones. They could be phones that are, what's the opposite of a smartphone? I'm guessing it's not a dumb phone, or let's call it an ordinary phone. Many older phones and ordinary phones have lots of affordances which are incredibly useful in language teaching or in teaching in general. And for the last four reasons, I'd like to look at those affordances. The first reason is text. Mobile devices are good at text. They're good at allowing you to read text, also good at allowing you to write text. So there are lots and lots of possibilities for note-taking, dictation, writing exercises, collaborative writing exercises, all kinds of things. And again, I really want to emphasize, I'm not talking about high-end phones. I'm not talking about an iPhone 6 Plus or 7 Plus or whatever. I'm not talking about the latest Samsung. Any phone made in the last 10 years will allow you to read and write text. And that's a great thing. That's one good reason. The affordances of these devices are incredible. That's reason number 7. Reason number 8, just to continue looking at the affordances, is again that most mobile phones made in the last 10 years or so, not smartphones necessarily, mobile phones, have a camera in them and can take photographs. Now, photographs are amazing things because that's the bridge between what happens inside a classroom and out. Photographs allow students to go out into the world and bring back examples from that world into class. Street signs, restaurant menus, photographs of their lives, photographs of their families, of their houses, of the neighborhood they live in, country they live in. And all those images potentially provide a very, very rich source for language creation and language play. The camera is an amazing device, a really, really amazing device, and one that I think I like to use as much as possible. Having people document their lives, people love sharing their photos. You know, you love sharing your photos. Now, of course, photos look much, much better on a very modern device, but, you know, even older cameras, older phones with older cameras can take photographs that are of use in the classroom. So that's my reason number 8. My reason number 9 is audio. Again, most mobile phones made in the last few years, and I keep saying this to emphasize that, not just smartphones, most mobile phones allow you to record audio in one way or another. It might be a little memo dictation thing, or it might be a big, you know, kind of a very modern app that allows you to record audio and upload it to the cloud and all sorts of, you know, fancy things. But they still do the same thing. They record audio. And recording audio is fabulous because, well, for lots of reasons. You can record audio and give it to students to listen to on their mobile devices. But perhaps more importantly, they can record audio. They can record themselves describing things. They can record a narrative, a description of their trip from home to school. They can record speaking activities. So instead of pairs, you can have 3 with one person recording while the other 2 do a speaking activity. And all that recording is available then as a source for language analysis, for pronunciation, fluency work, for error correction, and all sorts of things. So the audio recorder, again, as a tool, is an incredibly powerful tool. Just to finish that sequence, my number 10 reason is video. Largely for similar reasons. Video allows you to record speaking activities. It allows you to document your life, to edit your life, and present your life, talk about things you do, talk about and show things that you're passionate about. They can be uploaded to places like YouTube and shared. They are essentially creative. They allow people not only to play with the technology, but also to play with the language and the images of the language, and to create these incredibly textured multimedia things. And they're great ways of getting people to sit down and look at the language they produce and listen to the language they produce. Now, if you're of a certain age, like I am, to do all of these things, when I started teaching English, if I wanted to do all of these things, record, take photos, make videos, I would have to have taken a suitcase to class with me with a video recorder and a cassette recorder, microphone, and all sorts of other things. But here now, for the last 10 years or so, we have these amazing devices where all those affordances are built into the device, sitting, or they're there in our hands, and they are potentially one of the best, cheapest, most efficient, easiest ways of integrating technology into education that we've ever had, or possibly that we are ever likely to have.